Alright guys, here's everything that's going to come with your kit and everything you're going to need to build a mini quadcopter. We've got the frame, motors, ESCs, PDB, NAS 32, accessory pack, FPV gear, and props, and props, and props. A little bit more props. The most important tool of all is a nice temperature controlled soldering iron, such as this. Solder. Hex driver. It's a 2mm hex driver or 5/64. Wire cutters. Or really strong fingernails. Some scissors are good to have. I also like to have a nice pair of tweezers. Double stick tape. Zip ties or some type of wrap strap. Or electrical tape. Alright, so you've got your frame kit laid out. The first thing I'm going to say is take these landing legs right here and throw them in the garbage because you don't want them. They break and they catch on things when you're flying low, so throw those away, you don't need them. If you want, get some aftermarket 3D printed ones or something. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to get started on with the frame is putting these red standoffs on the top of the bottom plate. So you're going to take just one of the bottom plates here and take your short screws and just start fitting them through the holes where the standoffs go. And if you don't know which holes on this frame the standoffs go, you can pause the video and take a look. So as you can see, all the standoffs are in their proper holes. Make sure you leave these 4 open. That's where the NAS 32 and PDB are gonna go. All right, so once you guys got your bottom plate looking like this, with all the standoffs in the right spots, we're gonna go ahead and get some of the arms sandwiched in between the plates and get them screwed down. So take your plates, sandwich an arm in there, and for these you're gonna use the longer screw and just thread them through both the arm and each plate. Once you get one screw in, it gets quite a bit easier. We've got all the arm sandwich in between. We're gonna go ahead and get all these nylock nuts just hand screwed onto these screws. Okay, now we're gonna get these nylock nuts screwed down. To do this, you need some type of hex driver or Allen wrench. This is a 5/64 inch hex driver. A 2mm will also work. And then you need something to grab onto the nylock nut. You can use just a pair of pliers and hold the nylock nut while you screw it in. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this power drill here and just crank each one down. And if you're doing a power drill like this, you don't want it on a super high setting because you don't want it to strip anything. Okay. All these guys are now screwed in. You have yourself a solid frame at this point. There shouldn't be any play in the arms or anything. If there is, you need to tighten it down a bit more. Now we're going to get the motors mounted to the arms here. You'll notice on these particular arms there's lots of notches on them. That's so they can fit different size motors. These notches, these arms fit from 1806 all the way up to 2208 size motors. The smaller M2 notches are for the 1806 motors, and then the larger M3 notches are for everything above 2204 basically. For this example, for this build we're doing today, we're going to be using these 1806 motors. And one quick note, guys, these motors come with two sizes of screws, 5mm and 7mm. Always use the shorter one to screw these motors down. We don't want the longer 7mm screw poking into the motor windings on the inside of the bell there. That'll ruin the motor. Other note, with these particular motors, you'll notice the different color prop nut. One is clockwise and one is counterclockwise threaded. That's so they can be self-tightening if put in the right spot. So if you'll notice, we're gonna put the black nut motors there and the silver here. And that way, the way they're gonna spin when we're done with this build, all these little prop nuts will be self-tightening, so when you take off, they just automatically tighten down and you have no chance of a prop coming off. All right, for this part, you're gonna need a 1.5mm hex driver or a 2mm hex driver, depending on what size motor screws come with your motors. With these 1806, it's a little M2 screw, so a 1.5 will do. Let's start with mounting this back right motor. Make sure you have a black prop nut motor, and take the short screw and just thread it in. Don't tighten the screws down all the way until you have all four in, and then slowly tighten down each one.
Darling, you send me. Darling, you send me.
Okay, once you have all the motors mounted, it should look like this. Silver, silver, black, black. So go into your accessory pack. There's going to be a set of standoffs for the Naze 32 and PDB. So you see these four holes? That's where the screws are going to go through. Let's poke the screw. It's going through both frame pieces. And just tighten it till it's snug. Do that with all four. Now, just drop the PDB right on top. Okay, what I like to do next is mount the XT60 pigtail to the PDB, so get that out of your accessory pack. This end is already pre-soldered, as you can see, but we need to go ahead and solder this into somewhere on the PDB. So, depending where you want this sticking out, you need to measure it and cut it to length. I prefer to have my XT60 sticking out of the back of the quad, so I'm going to choose to place it right here. I'm going to measure it. I'm just going to mark the general area with my thumb, and then I'll cut it with some scissors. You can throw away or save this excess wire. can go ahead and turn your soldering iron on. I'm gonna set mine to about 300 degrees Celsius. So by the time it's heated up, or by the time you're done stripping these connections, it'll be ready to go. Alright, so get your wire cutters out. We're gonna strip just a couple millimeters off each end here. Twist the wire after you cut it nice and hard. Get something to mount your wires. I'm using this little vice grip here, just something to hold them snug while you tend the tips of them. I went ahead and tended them off camera already, but I'll show you what I did. It's very simple. Just make sure they're all twisted, all the wires are nice and twisted, and then just give it some heat. Like I said, I'm using 300 degrees Celsius. Add a little solder, and then you'll notice the solder it'll start enveloping the whole wire, and then you can start adding solder directly to the wire because it's hot enough, and it'll melt right in. Just like this. And this is where like a really good soldering iron comes in handy. Now we're gonna we're gonna get some solder on the pads that the XT60 LiPo pigtail is gonna connect to, so that when we add some heat to it, they both mesh together and mesh real nice. I'll try to keep my hands out of the way. So add a little bit of heat to the pad, a little bit of solder, and voila. So adding a little bit of heat, a little bit of solder, gets the whole pad nice and juicy. You'll notice the negative and positive indications above the ESC pads. Please keep that in mind when soldering anything to these. So in this case, the negative pad's on the left. So all I'm doing here is I'm gonna put this tin tip right above the solder pad and just apply heat. And eventually it's all going to melt down and mesh right into that pad. There it is. You'll notice that it's one solid connection. Just make sure that the separation between the middle there, between both positive and negative, is clear and there's no solder bridge. And then strip a little bit off of each tip here. Now we're going to connect a servo cable to the 5-volt output on the PDB. This is going to be to power the Naze 32. And cut it in half. We're just going to get rid of this, this white pin here. You can just cut it. I just prefer to depin it like that. And I'm just going to tend these really quick. Now we need to tend the 5-volt output pads on the PDB. So here's the 5-volt positive pad and the ground pad. So red's obviously going to go to positive here. There you go. All right, I've got the ESC power leads here. We're gonna go ahead and get each one 10. Go ahead and get that done for all of your ESC power leads. So go ahead and get your ESCs laid upside down in this fashion, because this is how we're going to mount them to the PDB. Keep in mind when you're doing the soldering, the polarity of the PDB. Black needs to go to negative, red needs to go to positive. And keep in mind, it's perfectly fine if all your negatives are bridged with solder and all your positives are bridged with solder, but never should they be connected in the middle between the two. So here we have the eSheen FPV camera and transmitter combo that can be added to your mini quad kit. And I'm just going to tell you a couple things about it and show you how to get it ready to be soldered to the PDB. So you can see it comes with this fancy wiring harness here, making it basically a plug and play option for FPV. And it comes with this balance port connector to power off of a 3S LiPo balance port. But we're going to go ahead and cut that off. You're welcome to use it if you're a 3S LiPo user, but many people are using 4S, so we're going to cut that off and solder this directly to the PDB. So whatever power comes in through these two leads runs through the video transmitter here, which in return powers the FPV camera. Took a close look at this PDB, you know that there's an FPV cam port and a video transmitter port. I'm going to show you the one simple way to mount this with just 2 solder points. So to prepare the wiring harness to be soldered to the PDB, go ahead and clip this balance port off. I did it about halfway. And once again, you're going to ten these 2 tips with solder. Now we're going to ten the VTX ports, positive and negative output. Now let's go ahead and get these power leads soldered to the PDB. We're going to start with the red power lead to the positive, and black to negative. So you've probably noticed we've got all this extra wiring with this FPV kit harness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of heat shrink and unplug this camera here, and I'm going to slip this heat shrink over this wire here just to keep it cleaner and in place. Got the heat shrink over the wiring harness. Take a heat gun or a blow dryer, or a lighter if you have to, and shrink it down. Now get your frame back out, and we're going to go ahead and mount the wiring harness onto the frame. Grab your double stick tape and cut off pieces to attach to the bottom of each ESC.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da.
Now that you have the covering off all the double stick tape, go ahead and flip the ESCs and mount them to the frame as I'm doing now. All I'm doing is doing basically a little backflip. I'm rolling them inwards towards the frame. For the silver prop nut motors, all the ESC leads and motor leads can be connected straight on as if they were facing each other. There would be no crossed wires. So the right ESC lead is going to plug directly into the left motor lead, middle to the middle, and left to left. That can be done for the silver prop nuts. For the black prop nuts, we need to connect them with one wire crossed. Now we need to strap down all this excess wire coming from the ESC and motor leads. Once you have them threaded through, it should look like this. We're going to thread them back through this hole in the middle so they come out under the PDB next to the 5-volt output here. So we're just about ready to add the NACE 32 to the PDB stack here. But we just need to add the rest of the standoffs and also tighten the screws down on the bottom here to make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, we got the rest of the standoffs on there, so we can go ahead and throw the NACE 32 on there. So the reason I orient the NACE 32 like this is because basically the USB comes out the side here and it's easily accessible. Now we can get the ESC leads plugged into the NACE 32, and that has to be done in a certain specific order. And that order is 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead and follow the leads through the center of your board and figure out which one is which, and go ahead and get them plugged in that order. the polarity of this. The white leads are on top, the black leads are on bottom. Last but not least, this little 5-volt output lead right here needs to be plugged into the 5th or 6th port, doesn't matter. This is going to power the NACE32. And once again, black goes on bottom and red goes to center as it's positive. So just like that. I'll go ahead and put the nylon nuts on to screw down the NACE32. Now I'm going to do a quick power up test with the LiPo to make sure everything's working properly. Before you do this, I highly suggest you check everything and make sure all polarities are correct. Black to negative, red to positive. And also, if you have FPV, make sure your VTX transmitter antenna is already on before you power it up. If you power these things up without an antenna on them, you're going to fry them. So we heard ESC beeps, and we've got lights on the NACE32 and lights on the PDB. So we're good. Now we're gonna get this FPV camera mounted to this little camera plate, which will sit in the frame like this, and then it'll be sandwiched in between the top plate, just like that. To do this, you can use M2 screws and M2 nuts, glue, or what I like to do is use 2 zip ties